What's going on, everybody? This is Jerome Moore, host and creator of Deep Dish Conversations. And firstly, I want to say thank you for all love and support, and thank you for exploring the perspectives of social change with me on this platform. I want to encourage you all to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube and on your favorite podcast listen platform. And make sure you give us a 5-star rating if you're loving the Deep Dish Conversations. I appreciate all of the support again. I hope you all enjoy this episode. Denzel, welcome back to the platform, man.
Glad to be back.
So if y'all not familiar with Denzel, he was on here a couple months back. He's the owner, founder, and instructor of Dynastic Arts, training, martial arts, self-defense, all of that stuff. And so go back and look at that or listen to it to catch you up. But we're going to get straight into it, man.
Yeah, for sure.
We're going to get straight to it. A lot has happened. Around mass shootings. Around the idea, specifically in the United States, around self-defense, policy. Should we do something about guns? What does that look like here in the United States? And this always becomes a discussion a couple times a year because we have a mass shooting. Right. And it's 99.9% of the time, it's a white male. Right, and so it's usually a domestic terrorism, white supremacy problem that I don't think this country ever fixes in general. Like that, white. I don't think that ever is solved, right? Unless they had to, because that starts at the very top of my government, all the way down to any other layer of system or institution or organization. And so, man, what are your thoughts about what has happened recently in Texas, in Buffalo, New York, and kind of like we're gonna stay here the whole time, like because I think this is crucial, and a moment of silence to those families in Buffalo and in Texas, in the people that lost loved ones, the trauma that was caused by that. Just condolences to all of those families. And just the victims. But where do we go as a country from here, man? From you dealing with self-defense, with you dealing with policy around gun ownership and gun rights, and how we are all affected by it, in different ways. Let's go, man.
Look, well, first off, like you said, rest in peace to all of the victims that were affected by the recent shootings, both this year and times prior to, because there's been quite a few. So I want to top it off with that, right? Because these are human beings we talking about. Right. I want to start this off by framing this properly with historical context. So the U.S. was founded on the genocide of Native Americans and the enslavement and violation of African peoples, right? So this is a colony, that was a place that was built on violence, particularly gun violence, because the advent of the gun allowed for the United States to exist. I would even take it a step further, and shout out to Professor Gerald Horne. I would even go so far as to say that this country was founded as a counter-revolution to what was then at the time an abolition movement that was growing. Not because Britain was some, moral authority or anything, but, the empire had no use, started to have less and less use for the institution of slavery. And so the colony that is known as the United States responded with war, you know what I mean? Landowning class was like, no, we still want to get money. We want to hold on to the institution of slavery. And so they continue to fight back, and not only against the British to have their own, but they continue to genocide Native Americans and Africans, right? So I bring that up to say that, like, to start this conversation off on violence abstractly without talking about the violence that undergirds this country would be extremely dishonest. Right. As I mentioned before in this in my last interview a little bit, because of that violence that birthed this country, that shapes so much of the culture, right? before we get into the specifics of self-defense and firearms and things like that, this country is obsessed with violence because it is the embodiment of colonial genocidal violence. Just period, right? So with that being said, as we talk about like just what's happening in this country, without cutting straight to it, what we're seeing is the chickens coming home to roost. And I say that because, and I say it in the spirit of Malcolm X, and even MLK had a variation of that. And I say that because the violence that we are seeing now, and not just now, we've seen over time with mass shootings, the police shootings, things like that. This is a domestic form of the things that people are experiencing outside of our borders, whether we're talking about South America, the continent of Africa, throughout the Middle East, Asia. A lot of these things that we're seeing out there, this is that being reflected back into our space through our obsession with guns, through our obsession with violence and domination and things like that. And there's a lot of elements that go into that, right? So I say that to say we have to start there, right? Before we know where we're going, we got to know where we're coming from, right? If we talk about this with that framing, then we have to get to the root of the problem, right? This empire structure works in such a way to where it's the world's police because of its guns. It's got the biggest guns, you know what I mean? Thousands of military outposts across the planet.
Billions of dollars.
Billions of dollars.
Into the military.
Gun lobby is the biggest like force, one of the biggest forces in this country, right? Right? You know what I mean? So it's like, if we're going to talk about like ending gun violence, people frame it that way, you got to go to where you're getting the guns from. And let's be honest, where the police are getting their guns, where what we call the underground, the streets are getting their guns, where the military is getting their guns, come from the same place.
Right.
And people don't want to draw that connection for so many reasons, but it comes from the same place. It's these organizations, these corporations that are based on war, defense contractors, things like that. So when we talk about this, we got to make sure we frame things around that, right? With that being said, we get into these mass shootings. We live in a country that is predicated on white domination, right? And I don't even want to say supremacy because that's not the case. It's domination. Right.
Hate.
I don't want to. Yeah, white hate. We don't want to speak. And to be clear, hate isn't always an individual, because we always frame it as this individual thing. Like, I don't like black people. Right. It's systemic, right? Right. And so
black people can carry black hate, right? Let me rephrase that. Black people can carry white supremacy mannerism as well.
Yeah.
I can project my self-hate. Pretty much that's what it'd be for black folks.
Exactly. And that's why it's always important to frame it as systemic, because like anytime when we engage in intracommunal violence, that is a byproduct of internalized white domination.
Indoctrination.
Right. Because the way in which it's done is directly informed by that, right? So you can't talk about this issue with mass shootings when you're not talking about that. And I'll even go so far as to say, even when we talk about the thing that happened in Texas, right? We know that was an 18-year-old boy that was Latinx, right? But the reality is the conditions that gave way for him to do that were predicated on these white supremacist structures. You talking about, I read somewhere that they were saying something about him being bullied for being poor and being bullied for who he is. What conditions put him in that position that even gave him the opportunity to be able to do that, right?
Yeah, because if you're poor, how do you afford that type of weaponry?
Right. Because that's one of the things that we want to do with the club. When we educating our folks, it's not just learning how to shoot, but also you can ask more critical questions. Yeah. Okay, now that I know what this gun is, what that gun is, how is it that our kids are able to get that high-powered rifle and they ain't got no money like that? You know what I mean? And so then you can start connecting the dots. Right. You know, so is that an aspect? It's going to Buffalo. The Buffalo is not being focused on because it in so many ways embodies, as one of my friends said, centuries and centuries of white domination into one moment. You got a grocery store in Buffalo that is one of the only grocery stores that those folks can go to. So you talking about a food apartheid, right? And I don't say desert because it doesn't lay the blame on where it needs to be. It's a food apartheid.
Right.
So you got that space, and they're already congregated in that space. You got this situation where elders were left vulnerable. You know what I mean? So you're talking about community and being able to take care of our elders. You got, needless to say, poverty. You know what I mean? Because that's the only space. You don't have multiple areas where people can go shop and stuff like that in that community, right? So you're dealing with food injustices. You're dealing with white supremacist terrorism. You're dealing with again the gun lobby in such a way to where there's not an effective, comprehensive response, right? Thinking about it from a perspective of self-defense, a lot of our folks are vulnerable, right? So when we talk about the gun laws up in New York,
there is no carrying.
Some of the most strictest gun laws in the outside of California, which we know historically is anti-black in practice, right? You know what I mean? Panthers, so many other formations, you know what I mean? But especially in California, like when we talking about the Mulford Act and stuff like that, like a lot of those gun control laws, and I actually read a amicus brief about New York stop and frisk and a lot of the strict gun policies. A very small percentage, and I'm talking less than 1%, of people who got pulled, who that law was enforced on, were white. I'm talking about like 99 point some was us. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like even when you get your well-meaning liberal friends, it's like, oh, we need more stricter gun control, blah 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 blah. Who is that gonna get enforced on?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then if we talking about this moment with defund the police, which is a very powerful statement because it's focusing on reallocating money towards the things that we actually need that will actually keep us safe, like housing, the community-based services, community control, things that we need so that people can have their own self-determined power. You can't say that and then turn around and be like, oh, well, gun control. Because guess what? Who's going to have to enforce those laws? Who's going to get money to enact those laws, to make those, to be pushed on the people who are going to be disproportionately black? The police.
Right. And how far does gun control go? Does it just go to the everyday community member, or does it trickle down to the police as well and to the military? Like and that's the thing, because if we know historically, if we know historically, right, the structure of policing has been historically more harmful to black and brown folks, and we can have the possibility to have guns, right? Now they know, they don't even have guns. They don't have no way to defend themselves. They don't have nothing, and we still get to keep our guns,
right?
They'll find a reason. They'll find a way to still shoot, harm, invoke excessive force, all of these things, because history tells us that's what's going to happen.
One of the there's a workshop that I went to, and one of the in the conversation, they define government as a ruling body that has a sole monopoly on violence. So what you're describing,
a ruling body that has sole monopoly on violence,
meaning that they get to dictate who can and cannot engage in violence based on what they say.
And for people we study economics, so let's help people understand 70% of anything you own or a percentage of any market, that means you're a monopoly. Just so people don't know. So that means if it was a company and they control 70% of the market in that sector, they're a monopoly.
So, and in this case, when we're talking about the state, where the state owns all the monopoly, all of them, and they may be able to dictate who can engage in violence through the Second Amendment, through various self-defense laws and stuff like that. But they are the ones who monopolize violence, which is the reason why you can't have a conversation around like defense, when it comes to like the police, stuff like that, because the state has a monopoly. They making the laws, they're doing everything. They're agents of the state, right? So when we talk about That's the thing that I always get with people who are just like, oh, gun control. I'm like, why don't you extend that to the police?
Yeah.
Or when you talk about that, why don't you, because let's be honest, the military is the global police.
Right.
Why don't you extend that to how and who and where we bombing and shooting at?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Should it even be violence control instead of gun control?
I wouldn't even frame it as control. Honestly, just purely is decolonization. Like, that's a large multi-century demand and call for action, because there is no way that you can honestly address this issue without redefining who and what has power. Right? Because if you take gun control to its logical conclusion, again, you implement these policies to where it's harder to get these weapons. These people that are engaging in mass shootings, they are still going to get guns, whether legally or illegally. They are sometimes. The other thing we're not talking about too is these people aren't lone wolves.
Right.
They're being trained, whether it's in underground organizations,
right.
Whether they're military, because some of them are former military
veterans. Yep.
And who don't get treatment, who don't get what they need. Right. You no matter how much you try to engage that and restrict that control, you're not going to stop those bullets when they go off.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so that's why, for me, part of the answer, not the entirety of the answer, but part of the answer is creating some degree of community resilience to where we can say, how can we immediately deal with that issue there, right? I've had some friends that are like, oh, well, good guy with the gun. And don't get me wrong, like I understand the pushback when, U.S. conservatives start talking about good guy with the gun. I get why people immediately like, nah. Training does matter. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't be doing what we doing. Like, let's cut this binary conversation out. It's not an either or. Right. Training does matter. Matter of fact, and it's kind of being drowned out of the discourse right now, but there was a recent story about this woman, and I want to say it was in Florida, but I could be wrong. This woman had her pistol. It was a party. It was a guy that came with an AR-15 and was shooting at the party. She had her pistol, pulled it out, shot him, took him out. Stopped what could have been another mass shooting. Right. You know what
Massacre.
I mean? Right. I mean, this woman, and I don't know anything about this woman, but I'm presuming she at least had enough competency to know how to identify the threat point, aim, shoot. That matters. Yeah. You know what I mean? The reality is there are people who are alive. No one was injured either. And the reality is, like, mass shootings are chaotic, they're unpredictable, all these things. It's not guaranteed that you're gonna always be on top of everything. But when you train, you increase the likelihood that can happen. You give people options. You know what I mean? So that's why for me, one of the more immediate answers to that is being able to train community members in, not just pistols. Right. I'm talking stop the bleed. Right. I'm talking CPR, right? Because those are more important even than the pistol, because you got to be able to save a life before you get into all that other stuff.
So I'm gonna throw this at you, Denzel. Now, because depending on the color of your skin, your experience in this country is different. Your experience in this world is different.
Absolutely.
But since we are living here geographically in the United States, your experience is different here. And we know that a black person with a gun, a brown person with a gun, is approached differently than a white person with a gun.
Absolutely.
Or an Asian person with a gun, right? And so, if I'm police and I hear, wow, Denzel has started this community self-defense training and it involves guns, because of the implicit biases that's embedded in the police system, I'm already on armed threats. So now if I have to get a call into that area, I'm already in the back of my mind, they do self-defense training with guns there. So wherever I'm going out there, they have guns. So I might be more likely to start shooting before asking questions. how do we navigate that? And I think that's one of the things. Like I think we should discuss is how do we stay safe and stay dangerous? Because clearly, when you have something like Buffalo happen, like when that happened, now I tend to try to follow all the carrying laws, right? But me starting to ignore those signs that says, that with the gun, the written no guns allowed in certain places, that are grocery store like, I'm like, think I might risk it this time because of just trauma, and I'm black, and I could be a target just simply because of that, right? How can community in general, but specifically even more so black folks, be able to walk around and be safe and stay dangerous and stay safe just simultaneously, and still just remain alive?
Yeah.
It's because it's dangerous being black. It's dangerous and brave. And so, it can be a tug of war because we got to understand the realities, but we also got to understand the realities. Right.
Right.
Can you take us through that a little bit, and what's your thoughts on that with just the psychological trauma one may face, even if you've never been in a gunfight, had a gun, anything, but just seeing it so much because of social media, have mass communication circulates around them because of the internet. Like, how can we stay safe and stay dangerous as a community as a whole, and then as black folks, because our experience is different?
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a step back from the firearm, and I'm gonna talk about self-defense.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna put that in context.
Okay.
So remember, one of the things I always want to emphasize wherever I'm at, guns are one of many tools. That's it. That's all. You know what I mean? Guns ain't gonna be and purely in the context of self-defense, gun ain't gonna be the answer for every matter, right? So, and the gun, being that it's a tool, it's an extension of the person. If this person isn't prepared, I don't care what type of gun you got. If you're not prepared, you're not gonna be able to use it properly.
Right.
So the first thing that you have to be aware of is your environment, right? So when I say the environment, I say that as a loaded term. Where you live, right? What state you live in, what city you live in. What are the laws around self-defense? And self-defense don't just mean firearms. This is self-defense. When you are attacked or engaged, or there's lethal or physical harm, what are those laws, right? Okay. And then you get out of the legal realm. What's your environment like? Does shit pop off in your area regularly? Where are the hot spots at? Where are the areas that you can go? You know what I mean? What are even when you have to navigate certain areas, what are the exits? What are the routes out? You know what I mean? Who's with you?
Right.
Who's with you? Who's in your environment, right? And there's training around these things, like how are people moving? Are people kind of, you know what I mean, kind of ducked off, like, they looking around like they about to do something.
Paying attention to body language.
You know what I mean? What can you have on you, right? So you were talking about a place that was, a gun-free zone or a private business that don't allow you to carry and stuff like that. Okay, cool. What can you carry, right? So again, that goes back into what state you live in, what city you live in. Can you have your knife? Can you have your pepper spray, right? Can you
taser?
Taser, right? If you a martial art, can you scrap? Right. You know what I mean? Because again, your greatest weapon is actually your body. Right. You know what I mean? All you need your body to use all the rest of that stuff. Right. So like those are the things you got to consider as well. And your primary focus is to stay safe and get away from the danger, right? You're not trying to create danger. You're not trying to necessarily go to it unless you absolutely have to. Your idea is to get away. The fights you will 100% win all the time are the ones you ain't got to be there for. Right. So that should be the primary focus. And you think about those things before you get to that. Now, when we start thinking about measures and skills that we need to get there, again, before you even get to the gun, do you know how to deal with an injury if you have an injury, right? And I ain't even just talking about bullet wounds or stuff, cuts. You know, if somebody have a stroke or heart attack or a diabetic situation, you know what I mean? Do you have the first aid, CPR, AED, stop the bleed skills to do that? Because before you even get to a gun stuff, that's self-defense too.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like your folks might be dealing with something, or you may be running into something.
Essentially, we all need to go through some type of EMS.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like people,
Yeah.
like again, you talk about the obsession of guns in this country. And we ain't even really getting into the full holistic aspect of self-defense. You got to be able to plug a hole before you can make a hole. You know what I mean? So it's like can you do those things, right? Then once we doing that, okay, all right, now we can talk about marksmanship. Then we can talk about defensive pistol, gunfighting. You know what I mean? Fighting while injured. And there's so many avenues to fighting, in particular gunfighting, that people think oh yeah, I'm just gonna shoot a piece of paper. No, you got to learn how to fight from defense. You got to learn how to fight with a gun when you're on the ground, while you injured. Right. You know what I mean? Because that's real life with more than one person. You know, so, and I say all that to say not to overwhelm people, but to say it's a skill set that you got to make a part of your daily life.
Right.
You know what I mean? It can't just be, I'm finna go to this gun store off somewhere and then get my license. Right. Take a class somewhere and then I'm done. No,
know what you like making me think about is nobody thinks when they go into any type of fight that they're gonna lose, or two, that they could be hurt.
Right.
So how do you respond to that? Because you just probably I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna whoop his ass or whoop her ass, and that's gonna be it. Well, you might get your ass whooped.
Exactly. and guess what? Let's say you win. You might win, but they might have more than one person with them.
Right.
Or they might be able to get up, come with a weapon. What you gonna do then? Or you may have won, but now you bleeding.
Right.
And stuff like that. So it's like, how do you accommodate for all of the very real thing? And my point is like, if you know, just using common sense, if you know you ain't finna be Bruce Lee when you come out of one kung fu class, and you understand it takes years and years to get to a solid place, why do we think that's any different with a firearm? You know what I mean? Like, if we really understand that gun fighting is fighting, and we understand fighting that's a skill you gotta really get good at.
Right.
People, for some reason, think that just goes away when you talk about firearms because all I got to do is press. That's not true.
Right.
It's not true. And so, like, I say that to say, like, you got to make it a part of your lifestyle, like tying your shoes. Like, there was a point where, when you was a kid and you struggled to tie your shoes, you had to think about it, you had to keep doing it. But after a while, just do it like it's nothing. So you have to treat that like that. And that's why, the Middle Tennessee Black Gun Club, Dynastic Arts, Surreal Self-Defense, that's why we here, because we want to make it second nature.
Because now the whole United States at this point, right? We've seen this enough. Enough violence, right? In various forms. But we're going to keep it at gun violence because of just what's happened recently.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Everything that you just mentioned, it seems like, okay, you see something enough like, okay, communities need to start preparing for this to happen because it's happening too often, right? And that's basically EMS course, self-defense training in all type of ways, and it's different levels, right? Or some type of protocol for communities to have, stores to have, leadership in those stores when things happen or occur, like a grocery store. When you think, man, I should be able to just come in and do my job. If I'm a supervisor, hey, you make sure you get the carts, you make sure you restock the bags and the canned goods and everything. I shouldn't have to worry about, okay, where there's, a armed shooter on site, what do I do? Seems like that needs to be implemented in human resources at this point on all levels. From community level to organizational, institutional level, just like we prepare for tornado drills and hurricanes and just bad weather. Seems like we need these things need to start becoming innate, especially with the leaders, adults, people that's in positions of power at these establishments. Have you had people probably before, but even now, is that something that you think organizations, businesses, and stuff should start reaching out to folks like yourself and the Middle Tennessee Black Gun Club and other organizations that do this work to train them and their staff?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Especially black ones, especially in Nashville.
Right.
I don't know how some people forgot about this, but there was a bombing on Christmas 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? Yeah, 2 years ago, wasn't it? All right, well, technically, a little over 2 years ago. That's an issue. You know what I mean? And we've had a shooting for we've had the Waffle House shooting. You know what I mean? One of my friends was one of the folks that was impacted by that. Like this is real. You know what I mean?
This just hit me.
Yeah.
This just hit me. Because us as a country cry wolf every time something like this happens, right? But it's been happening so long.
Yep.
Right? It's been happening to black folks even longer, right? Since we came over here. Violence, we just been harmed. But it has happened so long. We cry wolf for an extended period of time and say we need change, whoop de woo, and then things go back to normal. I really think, I know Americans are obsessed with harm.
Right.
Right? Because it's just everything is centered around punishment and harm in this country anyway, right? Many things. From elementary school to prison. It's a punishment-centered society that we live in. And so I think Americans really need to, United States, people live in the United States, Americans, really need to do some soul searching on how much they really care about people being harmed in violence. Because if we, even the Sandy Hook. And those are white kids. Right? And so we know when white folks are harmed, things things begin proactive. Things start to happen and change.
Look at the fentanyl issue.
Right, fentanyl, right. Opioid. Right.
Versus the crack era.
Right. Things, when white people start getting harmed, things start to change a little bit. But that ain't been the case with gun violence in this country. So I don't really know how much people really care about the harm and for the long term because it's been happening so long, and I think we're probably subconsciously just desensitized. It's like, oh, this is what happened here. It happens.
Adjusted to the crooked room.
We exactly. And so for people that's because of this issue, they're saying we just need to get rid of guns. We need, and you touched on this a little bit. Is abolishment, is that the best answer?
I'm gonna throw you off with this one. I'm actually with him. If there was a way we could do that, even knowing that there's more guns and people in this country, knowing the nature of this country and everything, how it's founded, how it currently is, I'd be for that. But here's the thing: if you're gonna do that, you need to disarm the police. You need to disarm the military. You need to disarm these non-state militia groups that white supremacists or genocidal in nature. You are going to have to disarm nukes and the military stations that are all across the planet. And you would have to figure out a way to disarm the rest of the world. For me, if you're going to disarm, everybody needs to disarm. And I mean everybody.
Well, we know that's not happening.
And we know that's not happening, right?
Especially now at the military level.
Right. We know that's not happening.
That's the whole purpose. They're there to be armed.
So because we know that it's not happening, right? Because we know that's not happening, the question then becomes for me, it's like, I treat it like, I think about it like how we should be approaching sex. Okay. Right? Sex is part of, it's part of human experience. Right. There should be a programming in schools and things such that people learn comprehensively what it is biologically, what it can look like, things we can do to protect ourselves, keep ourselves safe, the diseases that exist out there, how do we address those things? Because that exists, regardless of how you feel. You know what I mean? Whether you love it or hate it, it's there. Right. You know what I mean? I think because of the nature of the United States and firearms, I feel like there should be an exact same thing. Like everybody, you don't never have to own a gun in your life. But everybody need to learn the rules of firearm safety. They need to understand what a gun is, because a lot of people can't even tell you what a gun is, including people who love guns. So knowing what it is and what it isn't, the history around, the real history behind it, knowing the companies that are responsible for the industries, including the defense contractors. Right. So people know exactly what all this is connected to. Knowing the different classifications, because I'm sorry, before we even get into the nuanced conversation, everybody don't even have the same set of facts. If I hear assault rifle one more time, dog, like okay, an AR-15 is just a popular firearm in the country. AR means Armalite. That's the company that it came. It does not mean assault rifle. It is a semi-automatic firearm. Right. It is not a fully automatic firearm. Folks who are listening, who don't know nothing about guns, please don't know this. And by obsessing over that gun, all you're going to do is move the goalpost. So people, you say, okay, let's get rid of AR-15s. Cool. One, that was modeled after a military version of that firearm. So all people are going to do is shift to another rifle that is going to do the same thing, if not more, right?
AR-15.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, AK-47.
AK-47. You got. I mean, we got M16. Like
M16s,
so many.
Yep.
It's like you. So it's not the model. Like, and I say that to say, people have to start with the same set of facts. Like, this is what a gun is. Right. These are the type of guns you have: pistol, revolver, rifle, shotgun, and they have categories within that. Knowing like the basics, then let's talk about how do we curb some of this stuff to some degree? You know what I mean? Which, if you're doing it honestly, you're not just gonna stay on guns. You know what I mean? But like, I think having a program where people can have the same stuff, have the same like understanding, that would actually save a lot of lives, believe it or not. Because even when you think about the gun community, like, so many people in that community, there's so many people that don't train, that don't know the basics. Right. Like, forget whether you love guns or not. The people who love guns, there's a lot of people who don't have those basic fundamentals.
It's a difference, I think, between gun community and gun owner.
Right. Right? It can be.
Yeah, it can be. I think some people, I think it's probably a lot of people who are gun owners, right? Then there's people who are in the gun community that
who identify
and know it.
It's a part of their identity.
Yeah.
And I mean, what you're talking about is different between people who see it as a tool and people who see it as their, like, who they are. Right. You know what I mean?
So I'm gonna go ahead and call it right now. There will be other mass shootings. We know this. It might not be in a grocery store. It might not be in a school. It might be in an office.
And we don't want it to happen. But that's just the way the conditions are.
If we look at the stats, if we look at historically, it's going to happen here in the United States. Right. Or whatever, right. It might be a smaller scale, but somebody out there is going to go grab a gun and try to shoot some folks. You know, just to put it plainly simple. And that can happen at any moment.
It's happening beyond our borders.
Yeah, exactly.
And within them. So.
Exactly. And so I want to touch on that a little bit in a minute, beyond the border stuff, because that kind of goes back to the roosters coming home.
Yeah.
So is there really anything, like, realistically, outside of the things that you already mentioned, as far as being prepared and making yourself kind of just most prepared to know how to respond when these things happen? We really can't stop it from happening. Right. We can only prepare for it. Would you say that's a true statement, or outside of like abolishment and going all the way down to the core, or like?
So the short-term answer is you can prepare to respond.
But you can't prevent.
I think long-term you could. Okay. I'm gonna say you could, and this is why I embrace the politics that I embrace. I'm an abolitionist, like police, prison. I am a person who is big on building self-determined communities. You know what I mean? Like that believes that, if we address people's needs directly, instead of obsessing and taking pleasure in punishment, then we can eliminate a large majority of the issues that we have. That's right. So I would say beyond the immediate preparation of the things that I mentioned, training, all that, and doing it in a group, join an organization. Join an organization, and not just any organization. Join an organization that understands this as an outgrowth of how this country was started. Join an organization that, with that analysis, understands that we can't just see this as an individual issue, but we have to see this as an issue of empire, right? This is a continuation of a culture that is informed by chattel enslavement, capitalism, genocide of Native Americans, all of these things, and it manifests into these instances of mass shootings, of mass death, of just like disinterest, the worship of death. Let's just call it what it is. If you join an organization that's doing work to change the conditions that lead to these mass shootings, whether it's fighting a food apartheid, fighting the environmental justice factors that cause people to want to do this, fighting working exploitative conditions that lead people to say, hey, I ain't got nothing, so I'm about to just go run it up. You address all of those things, you know what I mean? Changing us, defunding the overly funded police departments so that money can go towards resources that people need. If you join an organization that's doing that work on top of addressing the immediate safety concerns, you are going to over time eliminate the conditions that'll greatly diminish or get rid of those mass shootings.
Yeah, I agree with you, and
it's not an either or too, because I think what happens is, and I don't think this is intentional, I think when we in mainstream conversations, people always characterize it as, oh, we can do this long-term work, or no, we got to immediately address. Doing both.
And both, yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of people throughout history that have done both. I mean, people love to talk about the Panthers, right? Y'all talk about the guns that they have, but they have free breakfast programs. They had they took community control of education. They did all these other things, and so like we have to be a part of efforts and organizations that do both. Locally, you got the Black Nashville Assembly.
Right.
They're doing that. We are doing that work. In a way through assemblies and like having black folks in the city name what they need, what the crises are, how we can build a policy and community-based agenda to address those things and change those conditions, right? And you also have organizations like Middle Tennessee Black Gun Club and so many others who are addressing how can we keep ourselves safe in the immediate sense, you know?
And these issues are so big.
Right.
Even like, and I'm stealing this from Theta Murphy. Shout out to Theta. Even when you have organizations that might not be doing the same thing, right? But they're working towards the same goal. Like they're so big, like eventually they'll meet and like you just get them from both ends in a sense, right? PATH might be working on housing, and Black National Assembly is working on the black political agenda. You know, at some point, you know,
of course,
at some point, like it'll all make sense and it's all going to the greater good. You know, not
different
to say
parts of the element,
different parts of the element. So I think that's important to put out there too. Like you don't have to pick and choose a particular side to be on, or you don't have to pick a side and have to belittle another side. It's like, no, what you're doing is great. What they're doing is great, and my whole thing is, as long as you're doing something, and you're not intentionally harming folks, like I can talk to you, I can be with that, because I think that's what's important. I think a lot of times, and you hear this in the Malcolm and Martin kind of debate or whatever. Like people try to choose which one had the best kind of platform or
they
methodology.
Never were, you know, like
at the same, it doesn't matter.
And I would really challenge folks, honestly, like now that you said that, read Malcolm X's final speeches. Like there's a book called Malcolm X's Final Speeches, 1965, and then if you look at Dr. King's work, whether you're talking about Chaos of Community, where do we go from here, why we can't wait, read the actual words of these folks and you recognize how they were paralleling each other. I mean, I read, it's funny, when I was at Morehouse, I read in the archives a letter that Malcolm X had sent Martin, Dr. King, when he was in Florida dealing with some white racists on the beach. Malcolm said, yo, look, I support what you're doing. If you need me to send a couple soldiers down there to protect y'all, you just say the word. You know what I mean? Because they understood that they were fighting the same fight, because they were approaching the same politic, right? Earlier in their evolution, there was some conflict, but people get so caught up in the verses.
Yeah,
it's not a verses. Stop the verses.
It's not a verses. And we get caught up in, I really, it's hard for me to really dislike people, but I really dislike folks that are sitting on the bench and say, man, if I was in the game, if I was in Denzel, I would have dunked that shit. I would have threw it for 60 yards.
Get in the game and do it. You know what I mean?
But not even like I don't care if you in the game and you throw for 10 yards. That's 10 yards we didn't have.
Right.
That's 5. That's 2 yards we didn't have.
That's true.
And so and that's my thing, and that's what I would like to encourage people. Like don't talk about what somebody is not doing because they're not doing it in the way that you would. You do it their way and let them do it the way that they're doing, because they're actually putting in work. And y'all might meet and collaborate sometime. But if y'all don't, cool. Y'all are both still doing something to move community ahead. And I just think that's crucial, especially at a time like this where it's a lot of different social perspectives, social change perspectives, which is okay, and I love exploring that. Right, this is what we do here. We exploring the perspectives of social change, but we never say, nah, they're not doing it right, or nah, I would do it. Nah, like, hey, they doing something, they champion.
Yeah, and I think part of that too, and one note or nuance I want to add to that is, like, you somebody I know calls it tactical unity, like where like you know that there are some people who have very differing ideologies, right, like just I'm just throw it out there. If you got some folks that identify as socialists or identify as capitalists, there's some things they gonna fundamentally. I mean, you got different aims. Right. Now, I'm not saying, when I say tactical unity, there may just so happen to be a point where there might be a campaign where there might be converging interests, like locally or something like that. Like, they may not want, a certain company to take over a certain thing. And I'm being real rough with that example, because oftentimes those are fundamentally different groups. But like, there are moments where people can work together. For sure. And I also think I don't think we should necessarily or always run away from ideological like debates and going back and forth, because the reality is that different approaches have different conclusions. And it's supposed to be a constant experiment, right? You're supposed to know, okay, what do we know works, what doesn't work? Why do we believe this? Why don't we believe this? Like why does this not work? Why does that not work? Like let's have those conversations. Constructively. And because I think because if we're more clear about that, then I think we can have more honest conversations about where we at and then where we can show up. You know what I mean? To your point. So I think I just wanted to name that, because anytime we talk about unity, we also got to ask the questions, under what conditions? Because unity always has something you go under, right? So, but yeah, I'm with you.
And I have a moral code. Everybody don't have this moral code, but I have a code. In general, but specifically with black folks. If I know me and you have different ideologies or fundamental ideologies on things, and we're trying to accomplish the same thing, and somebody asks me, what do you think about what Denzel is doing over here? I'm not gonna bash you. I'm not gonna do I'm just not gonna do that. And I might know like Denzel is just really fucking up right now. But we can have a sit down like this and say, Denzel, man, like I see you doing this. Help me understand, like kind of like what is that? How's that? Like, because I'm seeing it differently, but I might not understand your full picture. And I think we should. I just think it's stay on
Yeah,
code.
yeah, yeah.
Stay on
I
code.
would love that. Actually,
we gotta stay on code.
That's a great practice because historically, when you don't do that,
you
that's how
create that
movements
tension. That's
get to die. You know what I mean?
And then people take sound bites.
Yeah,
like Martin and Malcolm. People just taking sound bites and stuff. And
not listening to the full conversation,
or not digging into the archives and stuff like that. Man, so I want to pivot back to violence.
For sure.
Pivot back to violence. So here we are, I don't even think it's a week removed from the Texas mass shooting.
Nope.
A couple weeks removed from the Buffalo grocery store shooting. People are feeling different ways,
right,
about what we should do as a country. What does it look like going forward with a lot of different policies. Here in Nashville, we got the mayoral election, we got some council elections.
Yep.
And then 2024 presidential.
And we still got judicial and
gubernatorial. In August. Yep. You're right. Still got judicial and the House and Senate. And so, these are policy making positions, right? These are when things yes or no budgets, money, and all that stuff. So the next 2 years is crucial.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What are you forecasting, man? What do you foresee? What are you foreseeing the way our country moving is the temperament of everything, and kind of, man. What are your thoughts on that, and how are you and Black National Assembly, Dynastic Arts, Middle C Black Gun, all the organizations and just community that you take part in, man. Like how are we preparing for this? What are your thoughts on this? What are some things people should be thinking about, even if you're not telling people what to think? What do people should be considering? At this moment.
So I'm gonna start with my assessment of how I see things as they are, and then I'll talk a little bit about what I want people to think about. I think where we are, I think we're still seeing the backlash to 2020. 2020 was a very pivotal moment, and it could have been even more pivotal had more people been organized, because we would have seen a fundamental shift in the country and arguably the planet. I think that we are seeing a right-wing backlash right now, and it's through the mass shootings, through the taking of different local offices throughout the country, right? Here, the redistricting, because we already live in a supermajority GOP state.
Republicans dominate,
and not even and even within the party, you have the people who are part of the far right, the extremists, the fascists, that are taking seats or going for seats. And you see them engaged in a lot of violence, terroristic violence. I don't think we'll see the last of that. I'm very concerned about 2024 in particular. Before we even get there, I'm concerned about August and November for our elections. I think that what we're also seeing too, and this isn't new, but I think we're seeing an attempt to shrink people's imaginations about what's possible, right? So going from that 2020 moment that had a lot of potential, a lot of that got absorbed by these, and it's no casting the work that anybody else is doing, but a lot of these possibilities shrunk from abolitionists rethinking power and community having power to these diversity, equity, inclusion things that are very corporate and don't ever get to the thing.
Hey,
You know,
we got a great value Juneteenth ice cream.
that's what I'm saying. And like the fact that another one of our things is being corporatized. I mean, and again, this is the problem. I think like this is what happens when you ask to be recognized by the same federal government and corporations that exploit us, right? But that's a whole nother segment. Like, we're seeing a lot of that potential get exploited and commodified and co-opted, right? And then you hear all this noise about, defund doesn't work. Well, if it didn't work, you wouldn't be having it in your mouth. You know what I mean? So you wouldn't be a part of these conversations. We're seeing a lot of promises, or we're seeing a lot of. I think we're also seeing even with the Democrats, we are seeing that, they not only are they not doing shit as they never have, but like they banked off of our votes to keep Trump out and are doing a lot of the things that Trump was already doing. You know what I mean? Like giving more money to police, not canceling loans, not doing any of these things. Like
it's hard to tell the difference.
It's hard to tell the difference. I mean, you have a face. I mean, shoot, we got the architect of the 94 crime bill that's the president right now. Like, so again, like, we have all these things, and there's this constant attack on those of us who are farther left, who are abolitionists, who are people who want community-based power. You know what I mean, and actually addressing people's needs directly. That's happening, right? I also recognize that a lot of people are making a lot of leeway and doing a lot of dope stuff that we've never seen before. Here in Nashville, you ain't never heard this much conversation about defund, abolition, community control stuff until we really had this budget fights we had recently, right?
Agitation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, we're in a place, and this isn't just exclusive to Nashville, where people are actually talking about things like the guaranteed basic income. Right. Shout out to Nashville Economic Justice Alliance and Moving Nashville Forward. Like, you have places talking about like creating mutual aid networks, including Nashville, creating mutual aid networks to directly address people's needs and getting people to think, well, if we can do this, why can't we get our city council and our mayors to allocate money towards resources and programs controlled and run by community that directly address our needs instead of just throwing our people behind bars? You're getting people's imaginations is starting to expand. Right. And so with that being said, I would really encourage people, given all of these things, this mixed bag, to really challenge yourself to think about, like, why is it that communities don't have direct control over our taxpayer dollars, right? When thinking about it from a policy or campaign perspective, why is it that you don't have direct control? Why is it that you have city council who are in the pockets of corporations and all these other entities who are buying up housing, making it unaffordable, not just in Nashville, but especially in Nashville, who are making health costs ridiculously unaffordable, who are investing in encouraging hyper policing in areas that don't really need it. They really need more preventative resources. Right. Why are we okay with that? Right. And thing I want to ask people is, what makes you feel safe, right? And I guarantee you, if you go down the list of all these things, food, housing, clothing, solid education, healthcare, transportation, reliable transportation, resources for children and elders, things like that, none of that involves police and prisons. None of that involves police and prisons. I mean, even when we talk about the most egregious things, where rape, murder, all of these things like that, when you address those and you are able to put those people in places where we can actually address those things while also addressing the harm that's been done in a transformative or restorative justice lens, you realize that the things that we got now ain't what we wanted and are not dictated by us. So the question I want to pose to people is, how can we create ways, whether it's through public policy, whether it's through assemblies, whether it's through mutual aid networks, whether it's through directly meeting each other's needs, how can we create a world beyond the conditions that lead to mass shootings, to these police shootings, to these unaffordable housing conditions, to where healthcare is a privilege more than it is a right in this country, to where we have to resort to firearms and things like that in order to survive. Those are necessary because that's the world that we live in right now. But how do we create that world to where that isn't necessary? And so, like, I think asking those questions, I think, are gonna help people more clearly understand how to navigate these upcoming elections, particularly what questions to ask politicians, but more beyond the electoral arena, what we need to do outside of that. Yes, no, I'm Sergeant of Arms, Middle Tennessee Black Gun Club. Yes, you need to learn how to defend yourself because there are going to be more people that are going to attempt to take our lives in mass, right? That's just what it is. Like, no chaser, right? Stop the bleed, first aid, CPR, yes, like pepper spray, firearm basics, and not just doing it by yourself, training with other people.
And I'm gonna plug you right quick.
Yeah,
I want, because I know for a fact there are heads of organizations in Nashville that listen to Deep Dish. And I've had heads of organizations on Deep Dish. I would encourage you all, because we know what's happening, just like you invest in other things that are better secure your staff, yourself, your building, your possessions, contact Denzel or Tanea.
I'm gonna name our instructor. Shout out to JC Shegog. Like, that is a world-renowned expert. Reach out to JC Shegog, please. Like, that is our instructor.
Well, I'm gonna continue plugging you right quick.
Yeah.
Because I know you here in Nashville, and I encourage small, mid-sized, large businesses to reach out to Denzel
For sure.
and his staff and his people and his network to get training for yourself and your folks, because these things happen. They are going to happen, and it's better to have your staff, your people, your team, your community prepared to prevent as much harm as possible that could potentially happen, and dismantle that before it even happens. Be able to read body languages, signs. The guy in Buffalo was at the store the day before.
Right.
Maybe if somebody would have been paying attention to Biden, maybe they could have said, let's keep an eye on him.
Exactly.
Things like that we're not thinking about enough, that we should, because this has happened enough at this particular point. So I'm wanting to make sure I was intentional about plugging you and what you do for organizations here in Middle Tennessee, because it's time.
Absolutely.
Like, it's time. It's time. Like, it's time.
And it's nothing new, right? Like, as I said in the previous interview, it's nothing new.
Security cameras can't stop bullets.
No, they can't. They can't. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
You gotta be able to, like, deal with the threat. And
right.
so, like, again, and this is nothing new for black folks. We've been doing this for a long time. Your granddaddy and grandmama had they Winchester back in the day when they was dealing with the Klan or anybody that was messing with them. All we doing is just bringing back old traditions in the 21st century. So, don't act brand new, but it's time.
Denzel, man, I think we gave it to him. I think you gave it to him, man.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to leave us with? And then, of course, as always, man, plug your information, how people can reach you. Because I really want businesses to invest in this resource that you offer.
Yeah.
Just like they invest in video cameras and security and all these things. Like, Tanea said it, and I'm gonna mess it up, Tanea. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna attempt to paraphrase. She was like, "Hey, we talk about all this stuff, like, like self-care, self-love, all these things, but not self-defense." And so, like, as much as we spend the time on mental health and all those things, like, we need to protect our physical health.
Absolutely.
And so reach out to Denzel, and if your business, especially with Juneteenth and everything coming up, get prepared, and go through a training or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. and at least be prepared. You know,
and I can plug a trainer. Well, first you can reach out and go to. I have an Instagram page, Dynastic Arts 2021. That's all together. You can find me on Facebook as well, Dynastic Arts. Middle Tennessee Black Gun Club. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Our website is midtnbgc.com. I do want to make a plug for our upcoming training. It's called Surviving the Encounter Weekend. It is going to be June 10th through 12th. And I'll make sure to give you the link tree so folks can go to it. We're going to be covering Stop the Bleed. So I talked about Stop the Bleed. We're going to have an instructor there. We're also going to have disaster prep for home and family, because disaster can look like a lot of things, man-made or natural. We're going to have a pepper spray. I'm going to be teaching a pepper spray class. We're going to have a Utah non-permit concealed carry, because when you have more than one permit from different states, it expands where you can actually go and carry. So we'll have an instructor for that. I'll also be teaching the pistol fundamentals, personal and home defense. So we'll be doing all of that weekend, June 10th through 12th. I'm going to drop the link to Jerome so that you'll know where to go to register for that. Come through. This won't be our last one, but definitely want to come through for this one. And as a message from our president, make sure you show up too, Jerome. You can show up to our classes. Deep dish got to be protected too. You know what I mean?
That's a fact. We always protect.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
We mobile.
Yeah, absolutely.
But man, thank you for this, Denzel, man. And y'all get used to seeing Denzel, man, because these are things that, again, we need to consistently, just like we talk about housing and poverty and hunger and policing, we need to be talking about self-defense and safety.
Absolutely.
And what that really looks like at a community level and a personal level. And how can we, one, help people realize, like, we having a fascination as a country with centering things around harm, and how can we get to more of a restorative justice system and thinking and what that looks like, because it'll take time. The more we talk about it and deal with it, the more people can be informed and really start to digest it and start to put it in practice.
Exactly.
We've been practicing harm forever, so we got to start practicing, restorative justice just as long, if not longer. And it starts with ourselves, man. So thank you for everything that you do. And this is fire. this, I might go ahead and put this out on audio like yesterday, so people can go ahead and tap into it, man. But thanks, man.
Yeah,
and look forward to, I'm looking forward to more of these conversations, man.
Absolutely. All right. Appreciate it.